Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this narration of the web series Very Clever Primitives, taken from Reddit. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 13.
Skalan, we're not going to need to get you to bed, are we?
Dr. Mormhine asked in jest, nudging my arm as my whole body shook under the assault of that coffee. The staff was kind enough to provide me a blanket, allowing me to wrap myself in a cocoon while my senses burned with energy. That along with a cup of water and 2 slices of pizza to fill my stomach. I was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, I'd be able to best the self-imposed affliction before the UN and the High Council demanded to speak with me. I trembled in worry. Perhaps first contact was not the appropriate place to be testing alien cuisine, especially while tensions were still absurdly high. I looked over to Dr. Mormhine with an exasperated expression, my colors fluctuating with the onslaught of different emotions brought on by the absurd amounts of caffeine present in human beverages. Even something as simple as their cooking was stimulating and mind-altering.
Dr. Mormhine,
I replied, my voice shaking, my body curled up under the blanket in an attempt to cleanse my body of that infernal toxin that made me feel like I could outrun a comet. My comment fell on deaf ears as the doctor walked in front of me, her eyes gazing into my own. It was like my very soul was stared into, and my scales went green in terror only a hatchling facing their clutch mother could feel, despite me likely being nearly double her age by Earth standard.
You're shaking pretty bad. Do you have any other symptoms?
She asked, tugging at the blanket I furiously clung to. My irritation was clearly showing, scales shining in bright orange in disdain.
I said I'm fine, Doctor. Just a bit of the jitters is nothing to be concerned about, I snapped back,
only causing the experienced doctor to hum in thought, which was swiftly followed suit by a faint tisk.
Were you a human, I'd throw you into a room and pump you full of fluids until the jitters went away. But considering the circumstances, she sighed, running a hand through her head fur, there's very little one doctor like me can say to keep you under observation when you're expected to give your opinion to people who make way more money than me, she muttered, giving a cheeky smirk. My less than amused expression made the doctor giggle. In truth, I think you'll be fine, Skalan, she mused, folding her hands behind her back. There are 3 glasses of water and 2 pieces of pizza next to you. I want all 3 of those glasses and both slices gone before that agent comes to scoop you away. Not much we can do with the caffeine already in your blood, though. So we'll have to hope your kidneys won't fail when the caffeine gets processed. She nodded, looking to me with confusion once more. You, do have kidneys, right?
Yes, the Valan have kidneys, I groaned, reaching out my comfy blanket cocoon to snatch a slice of pizza from the nearby plate, biting down on the grease bliss-filled treat. My scales immediately turned a bright yellow at the flavor, causing the doctor's amusement to grow exponentially. She actually pulled up a chair to sit next to me, pulling out a small pad of paper from her coat pocket and a pen.
Skalan, this actually brings up a good point, she began,
beginning to write things down on that small notepad.
We don't know much about your anatomy. Since dissection is out of the picture, could you explain to me the similarities and difference in layman terms between our species? She requested,
causing my scales to flare green for a moment.
Dissection.
I began to fidget even more noticeably, causing the good doctor to laugh at my obvious unease.
Relax, Skalan, it was a joke. There's a thing in popular culture that there's a secret underground military bases where they bring in aliens secretly to dissect, to learn more about their anatomy.
She chimed in, an absurd notion to the doctor, but my eyes went wide with that statement, and I became a green light.
Secret, underground, military bases?
Yeah, but that's just conspiracy theories.
Conspiracies? Sure,
I muttered, clearing my throat. Back to the question then. Assuming my body doesn't shut down with these shakes, I'd be happy to help, I said, reaching a jittery hand forward to place the half-eaten pizza slice down on the plate as I began to sip on some water.
Ask away, Doctor.
Sure, she began, gazing at me in a comfy cocoon. For starters, how are we similar, she asked.
In many ways,
I stated, shakily resting my cup on the table.
We have all the same bodily systems. Evolution appears to have a universal list on what major organ systems to include. Endocrine, nervous, respiratory. You'd be quite disappointed just to see how similar we are. It'd be better to go over what makes us different and what makes you humans so fascinating and horrifying to the Valon biologists like me. I began, my scales turning yellow as I was brought back to what I knew. I could have been having a conversation with another scholar of my species. So, your kind have no additional organs to note of. Are we exactly the same in most respects? She muttered, writing details down on the notepad. I groaned, taking a few more drinks of water before I really began to consider the question being asked. My mind felt as if it was running a marathon, but this was a fellow biologist. She had questions I needed to answer. We have a few mundane additions to our digestive system, I began, though they do see some use. We have an organ named the VAC attached to our small intestine. It releases an enzyme into chyme being digested to further break down nutrients for us. I'm sure mine is having a great time learning how to deal with pizza and coffee, I cackled, causing a soft smirk to rise up on her lips. In terms of digestion as well, we are omnivores, obviously. However, we are far better at processing proteins compared to you. If the calculations of a moody biology AI can be believed, I cackled. The doctor, on the other hand, did not find that last statement funny. In fact, her skin turned extremely pale. What was that about AI, Scalon? She asked, her attention immediately drawn away from her notepad. My head tilted to the side. Oh, AI, artificial intelligence, quantum computing gave us the power to create living minds in our machines to assist in tasks, I nodded, smiling. My personal artificial assistant is named Lbry. It can be a bit moody, but we get along quite nicely. The anniversary of its creation will be soon, too. I'll be sure to give it some time off to do what it wills, I smiled, my shaking frame falling back into the chair. Yet the good doctor seemed to be growing more and more panicked. My head tilted to the other side, curiously. What troubles you, Doctor? I asked. You have AI, yet you're still here. Is it like a program or something? She asked, leaning forward. I blinked in confusion. Why was she so interested? It was just a scholar AI. Most Valon did have one AI assistant to help with their duties. Well, it does consist of some pretty powerful coding, but for all intents and purposes, it is an artificial life form. You'd like them. Lbry is pretty snarky, I muttered, cackling under my breath. My heart race was finally starting to settle down, but I grew concerned with how Dr. Mormhine's breathing seemed to increase in pace. Again, what troubles you about it? Scalon, she began. Humans and artificial intelligence, we've written horror stories about it. How are you still dominant in your culture? Why hasn't the artificial intelligence tried to wipe you out for using it like you do? They're slaves to you, she cried out, exasperated, but it only caused me to laugh harder at the audacity of it. Slaves? Our AI? Hardly. Our AI have personal resource accounts and even are captains on some of our ships for exploration missions. The leading scholar of faster-than-light travel on ships that I live on is an AI, I reassured, trying to ease the humans' unease. Were humans that paranoid about everything? It actually began to bug me quite a bit. Dr. Morheim, you've battled some of the worst genetic diseases I've seen in a species, and I've catalogued many thousands of them. Every human, aside from Agent Prowl, that I've seen has had some air of paranoia about them regarding other humans, what our species is going to do, and what the future holds. To answer your question with one of my own, why would we give AI any significant reason to crush us? We treat them as equals and honor the work that they do. We want to do the same with humans. Please, you're the first human that actually makes me feel like I'm speaking to someone, not trying to stab me in the back. Explain this to me, I begged, forgetting about the caffeine overdose at the moment as I leaned forward. Dr. Mormheim let out a sigh, the color of his skin returning as a few strands of gray hair fell on her face. It's a human condition to be paranoid. Goes all the way back to when we were cavemen, I guess. She shrugged. I blinked in confusion. What does she mean by cavemen? She seemed to sense my confusion and let out a laugh because of it. Our evolutionary forefathers, we called them cavemen. as we found primitive artwork from them in caves along with tools and the beginnings of what we'd know as civilization, she began, clearing her throat. It appeared that our discussion on the biological differences between our people would have to be put on hold. Scalan, you must have looked at our world before you landed here. Did you not see the giant storm clusters floating in our atmosphere? She asked. I bit my tongue, not wanting to answer the obvious question. Humanity doesn't survive a planet filled with animals that have claws, poisons, and razor-sharp teeth, plants that look good enough to eat, but will cause your body to convulse and writhe on the ground in horrifying agony. And, finally, natural disasters such as literal mountains exploding and pouring hot ash into the atmosphere, causing hundreds, if not thousands, of years of winter, she bellowed out. My eyes went wide, my scales shining a bright neon green, and I fell back into my chair, thinking about what she had just said. It surely should not have been that bad. You must have been apex predators to become sapient as you have. I nodded, thinking on how much stronger and more oxygen-efficient humans were compared to us. I was stunned, however, when she laughed at my assertion. Oh, heavens no. We were prey for most part until we developed tools. At least, that's what I remember from my anthropology classes, and that was years ago. She trailed on. I was quite enthralled. Not once had I considered the evolutionary necessity behind humanity's paranoia that was so clearly obvious. My mind trailed off to when we first encountered the planet. The weather patterns alone deemed the planet uninhabitable by my people. Earth was a planet of hazardous environments, dangerous flora and fauna, and its gravity alone would be enough to cause significant health problems with prolonged exposure. I was already feeling quite exhausted being on this planet. Minor differences in gravity could be felt after a while. This, actually explains a lot about your people. This constant paranoia. It explains your biology as well, I mused, my eyelids falling slightly. The caffeine finally seemed to be wearing off, leaving a void of energy where it once was. A yawn left my maw before I gazed upon the doctor once more. Constant threats during your evolutionary path would explain why most humans I have met are wary regarding the unknown, I muttered, causing the doctor to laugh. Well, a lot of us are. We are also inherently curious and explorers. I suppose you could chalk that up to being a nomadic people that can survive in almost any climate, she stated. I was inclined to agree. She actually began to laugh, looking towards me with an almost predatory gaze. We were explorers because we needed to travel for food. At least, that's what I think. We'd tail animals faster, stronger, and bigger than us for days until they were exhausted and couldn't fight back. Then we'd kill them and feed our families with their meat. We are endurance hunters, willing to go everywhere and anywhere to ensure our survival. She spoke darkly, my eyes growing wide with the thought. Endurance hunters? Oh my. These primitives not only clawed their way to the top of the food chain, but they made absolutely sure that every other creature knew of their might. Humans were horrifying. They were prepared for everything that could go wrong. They were prepared to fight for everything they needed to survive. It was no wonder the general took so many precautions when we first arrived. Why, he planned for our arrival for God knows how long. Humans expected danger at every turn, and nothing would stop their biological need to survive against all odds. Their children were pumped full of toxins designed to keep mutated cells from growing further. Their astronauts would pound on alien ships just to see what was inside. The military worked in secret, preparing a hidden line of defense before any threats even arose. They looked at their fellow humans as rivals to their own survival. Humans were very good at telling nature, technology, and any other threat to go feck itself. They were human. They survived the onslaught of Earth. They bested every single threat thrown at them by their own damned planet. And then, once those threats became mundane, they waged war against genetic mutations and hypothetical alien threats. Everything was a threat, at least in some way, to a human. But the unknown also presented an opportunity for better odds of survival and living. Hence, the friendly nature of some of the humans I've met. I'm a new, unforeseen possibility for them. My entire race was. Some people embraced the unknown as a new opportunity. Others viewed it as a danger that needed to be watched and guarded against.
No two humans thought the same. No two humans had the same opinion. Humans were stuck in this primitive struggle between welcoming and fleeing the unknown. They scrambled around that little blue orb, desperately searching for their next step, and they were so close. Yet they just couldn't agree with one another. It wasn't as simple as borders between countries and civilizations like it was with the Vallon. Humans just genuinely had drastic differences in their ideals, even on an individual level, that arguments were bound to happen. But the species' emotions weren't just colors on their scales, but rather physical actions. Rage from a heated argument would no doubt lead to violence. Sure, a punch to the snout by an angry warrior cast member happened, but it took a lot to set off a Vallon like that. For humans, it was second nature. Or was it? The doctor seemed fairly rational, as did Agent Brown. My scales turned orange in frustration. I had to speak to the High Command in a few Earth hours as a first-hand character witness for humans, and I still didn't know nearly enough about them to offer a decent opinion. I knew of their subtle deceit. I knew of their paranoia. I knew of their reckless abandon for their own safety when a new opportunity appeared, which, by the way, was a species-wide contradiction when their paranoia was considered. Humans weren't uniform like we were. They were all different. They were a colorful vomit on a blue planet, and each individual drop of paint was a different color, and it was driving me mad. Good gods, I was just a scholar, not a philosopher like the diplomat caste. I took biological samples. I read those samples after my AI partner ran some mundane tests, and I provided my input. That was it. Why was I the lucky one that just so happened to take the damn sample of human genetics? Why was I the focal point of all of this? They could have sent anyone else, but no, they sent me. That general asked for me, and my people just went along with it as if nothing was the matter. And now I had this important task, after talking at length with a grand total of 3 people, to offer an opinion on their entire species. It was impossible. Every single member of their species was different. Every single one had their own dreams and motivations. Every single one either embraced or fought against the unknown. They battled each other for dominance because they had no one else to fight. Nature, the one thing that kept them in check, was no longer an issue to the mighty human. What do I say? How do I say it? How can I possibly tell anyone anything about a species that could not be understood even in 100 years of research? My scales turned bright red with the fires of my anger and thoughts. "Scalon," the voice called out. I didn't listen. My body was no longer shaking, my exhaustion from the caffeine no longer present. Only fear, doubt, rage, and misery awaited me. I couldn't pass judgment on an entire species, nor should I. I was in my element here in the hospital, treating sick people and discussing our species' anatomies. But no, my fate is much more grand. All because I did what I was supposed to do, and took that damned biological sample because my species acted like hatchlings around new sapient biological lifeforms on some backwater fecked-up monster world. "Scalon!" a voice barked, snapping me out of my trance, my scales fading away from red to a soft, muted orange, as I turned to look at the voice. It was Agent Brown with a certain bald-headed, bright-eyed girl bouncing up and down on her feet. "Hi," she exclaimed, holding onto the IV. "I had tests. I'm better now," she said, her voice not nearly as choppy as it was while she was sick. "When I get all the way better, can I see the other aliens, Mr. Scalon?" she asked, chipper as could be. I nodded hastily, falling back into my chair as she nearly ran forward. Nurses and doctors were trying their absolute best to keep her away, as the fact of the matter was that she did just have a life-threatening mutation. However, after Agent Brown offered pleasant words, she waltzed over to me, swaying back and forth, those eyes of hers staring into mine. "I'll be able to see more aliens, right? You're gonna take us into space, right?" she asked, her voice as sweet as fructose. I sighed, looking to the small, human child. Maybe I was overthinking this. Maybe This wasn't some massive moral dilemma I had to solve alone. Maybe I wasn't the perfect space-aged alien that came here to enlighten humanity. Maybe our species had something to learn too. Even after the chemical hell this child went through, she was ready for adventure. Maybe all of humanity was. Maybe all of humanity just needed a little push in the right direction to get moving past their primitive, horrifying blue orb. I'll see what I can do, Scar Lily, I said, reaching out for my blanket to pat her head. She giggled wildly and wrapped her arms around my cocoon frame in adoration, happy as could be.
Good. Maybe if we get into space we can find other Circadian kids to help, like you did for me,
she said. I positively melted. Maybe, Scar Lily, maybe, I responded, Agent Brown crossing his arms, a smirk on his lips as he peered over to us. You've got a few hours still, Scalon, Agent Brown said, shaking his head, and you have to spend 2 or 3 meeting the people that want to thank you. Thank me? For what? I asked, my head tilting to the side. What? Did you think those kids you just saved wouldn't have parents? He responded. Let me tell you, there's a river of grateful tears and gifts outside of this room for you. Security is barely able to keep them out of here from swabbing you. Figured I'd let you see your handiwork firsthand before I guide you through the mob, he cackled. A mob of overjoyed humans. Oh, this would be a treat. End of chapter. The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I would just quickly like to give thanks to our Tier 5 members. Elithia, Barky, Feudicuel, Meridian117, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Albard and Gusta, Savage Patch Papa, and Lord Azrakal.